Well, I think I'm so darn old I can't get any older, but they watch you have to pass these various exams and so on. But I'll have to keep on flying. I can't help it. I've got to fly. And a lot of these old-timers, we're getting put on the shelf one after the other, but I notice a lot of old men, 60 and 70, driving automobiles. And so as long as you can pass your exam, I suppose we'll keep on flying till we're 80.
Telescope. Brought to you by General Motors of Canada on behalf of your authorized Pontiac, Buick, Beaumont, Acadian dealer.
Tom Lamb is a bush pilot. He's been at it for more than 35 years, ranging aloft over Canada's northern wilderness from the Lake Country to the Arctic Circle. And today, with 6 of his sons, he operates a unique family flying business in the north. Cargoes often include some highly unlikely combinations. Half a dozen caged wild lynx for a zoo in the United States might share space with an anxious, expectant mother traveling from a remote village to a hospital in the south. Then there are the ordinary consignments of mining equipment, fresh food, fuel oil, or enough lumber to build a small house 500 miles above the tree line. The Lamb family of the Paw, Manitoba has a motto: don't ask us where we fly, just tell us where you want to go. And they fly hundreds of thousands of miles every year to the far places where landing conditions are primitive and fuel supplies scarce. In the vast frontier areas of the north, an element of adventure is very much a part of daily routine for the bush pilot. The story of the Flying Lambs, right after this message. Tom Lamb has 6 bush pilot sons, including a set of twins, plus 3 daughters. Some people feel that if the family didn't exist in the flesh, they would have been invented by a television scriptwriter. This independent family with a mild-sounding name has a knack for getting an airplane in and out of places the Wright brothers would have hesitated to visit, even on foot. And this isn't the only attribute that makes the Flying Lambs one of the more colorful families of the north.
Che apago mo ni se wepan.
Ka.
Uteski meoski. Tansima tai siwe pagyo apak.
Cree is a second language for the Lambs. Sometimes they use it to confuse eavesdropping competitors on radio. Other times to double-check the long-range weather report.
Connie says we're going to have good weather tomorrow.
Tom Lamb grew up with the Cree people in northern Manitoba after his father turned from teaching to become a fur trader at the turn of the century. In the late 20s and early 30s, a transportation revolution took place in the north, and by 1935, Tom Lamb had established one of Canada's pioneer flying services. Fish and muskrat paid for airplane parts during the first difficult days, and bush flying pushed farther north.
Back in the 35, 36, we were out looking for Eskimo up north, counting them and giving them names and taking them grub. They had a hard time up there. Since then, they've moved a lot of them to Churchill and moved them out to the coast. And then we'd fly polio cases and sick children from various reserves, which weather was our big problem. No radio in those days. Just strike off. And you got back home when you got home, that's all. Never know where you were. I remember coming down from the Arctic with a load of kids and ran to bad weather, land in a big bay, put your snowshoes on, break a trail into the timber, slash down the trees, put lots of spruce boughs down, get the kettle boiling, get all these kids around there with what rags they've got to cover themselves. A lot of them had to carry with a maimed with their not broken legs, but they can't walk. And then get a few rabbit snares out. If you have to camp overnight, you got to work all night, and then next day maybe clear as a bell, warm up your engine, keep the spruce boughs out of your oil pails, to drain the oil at night. And then strike off again, load them all in, and then you'd have a hard time unsticking your skis. Now, there used to be brass bottoms, old Elliott Brothers skis. There's one chap a couple of years ago went down a nice road from, where was it now? Helica Straits, not far from Hall Beach, this side Baffin Island. He got in a nice flow, and he was there for days with his old Norseman, drifting around. And some Eskimo come along and saw him, and saw the airplane, drove up to him, and the silly mutt, though he's going to stay with his airplane. That he might have, anyway, they found him later on, but you want to befriend those Eskimo. Whatever they suggest, you just do exactly what they say you should do. The Franklin expedition had heard to them better and lived with them and married them and so on. There'd have been a few survivors left of the 52 that died over at Joe Haven, just up in King William Land. We fly by there quite a lot. Oh, there's lots of airplanes in the bush. I've flown out lots of dead men, burnt men, lost men. Every summer there's a pilot or two disappear, and for this last 3 consecutive years, north of Yellowknife, there's been 3 airplanes. One every year goes down, and there's absolutely no trace of them at all. So it's still more or less rugged, and distances.
The Eskimo settlement at Repulse Bay, over 1,000 miles northeast of the Lamb's main base at the Pas, Manitoba. The last mail delivery here was 3 months ago. The gas supply came in by ship last year.
We have gas caches at Baker and Chesterfield, Arctic Bay, Hall Beach and the Gulick. About $25,000 around Baffin, and maybe $35,000 worth up north of Churchill. But the hell of it is, everybody comes in there. Oh, I know Tom Lamb, sure, yeah. And we give the old fathers, the old priest up there, $1 a barrel to lock her up and keep track of it. But they generally overpower him and talk to him, and it's pretty hard to turn an airplane down, and he's absolutely stuck for gas. But they will come year after year, these trippers through the north, and want to make a heroic flight and never plan for the gas a year ahead of time, so we lose quite a lot of gas. We just charge it up to profit and loss.
In the last few years, there has been more profit than loss for the Flying Lambs, judging from their growing fleet of aircraft. They now own 15 planes and a helicopter and fly close to 750,000 miles a year. They have hired additional pilots, but more planes have meant longer periods away from home for the men in the family and more waiting for the wives.
Well, my husband likes flying so much that I really don't worry over them too much. I'm used to it now, and it's a little hard on my daughter-in-laws. They haven't had quite as much of it as I've had, and it takes a while to get used to their husbands being away so much, and then being called all hours of the day, and the phone's ringing half the night, people wanting trips and all these emergencies. They have to get going early and travel late. But they'll get used to it after a while.
And what? There he has 4 paws, I think. Does it?
Little one rat over there, the small one, see? His old mother will look after him. I wish those geese would come over here.
Tom Lamb once thought of retiring close to nature on the family ranch near Moose Lake. But last year, a hydroelectric dam flooded the area. Now he spends his free time with a few of his many grandchildren, pointing out the mysteries of the marsh near the float plane base.
Look over here, you see? Look at that gull there, see? It's got its young ones there. No wonder it gets after you. It's going to peck on top of the head. Look how it's going to peck on top of the head. You see those 3 mud hens over there? Well, they come at night time. Do you know why they come at night?
Why?
Because they're dirty and dusky and brown and kind of a dirty color, and they're ashamed to come with all the perky broad bills and the spoon or the pintails. They're pretty, so he has to come at night. Well, then by coming at night, he's got to have something to go by. So we figured, Jack, the man was on this earth long. We made a little lantern here, a little red patch, and he comes right past Winnipeg and towards the prairie, and he has that lantern right out in front all the time. That's what the Indians say about him. Yeah, you know what they call a mud hen?
What?
Quee-quee-chee-tip. Say that. Quee-quee-chee-tip.
Quee-quee-chee-tip.
That's right, and the sea keep is a grieve, a diver, a hell diver. Sea keep. Sea kip.
A.m. at the Lamb's Air Base near the Paw. On Baffin Island, 1,500 miles away, there is work for the Otter, and Jack Lamb waits for a replacement pilot for the Beechcraft. But business isn't the only concern that prompts Tom Lamb and his son Don to journey into the northern wilderness.
When you land on one of these little lakes way far, far away, and very careful how you land, you don't puncture your floats or pile up your airplane up against a stone wall. You put up your tent, and the first thing you do, you wander around and look and observe, and you'll see a ring of stones that maybe 300 or 400 years ago an Eskimo were holding down his tent. It's a great country. It's a fascinating country.
On their first flight, sitting on Tom's lap so they could see over the control panel, the Lamb boys started to share their father's dream. After that, there was no keeping them out of the aircraft.
Well, they were pretty small potatoes, 8 and 10 years old, and Dougie was the worst offender. I remember one time he stowed away in the back of an airplane wrapped up in the tarpaulin. I didn't know he was there till I got 200 miles north. A little beggar, and I couldn't do anything with him but continue the trip with him. He could have been any more than 9 years old or 10. But they learned how to drain oil and look after the temperature and gas up and so on. And then they sat on my knee and traveled with him and slept with him and froze with him and went hungry with him. And I say, if I should die tomorrow, I've had a very happy time with my family. We've been through all kinds of hardships together, gone to the bank to borrow money together, and hungered together, and traveled over thin ice together, and slept together. I've had a very full life.
Unexpected engine trouble over rocky bush country, and little time to find a lake to land on. As luck would have it, Greg is monitoring his radio in a plane halfway across the province. He hears his father's emergency call.
DTL, IRP. Got something wrong with this darn engine here, Greg. You picking this up? Go ahead. Roger, okay. We're in Little Lake, about 40 miles out of Churchill, north of the Churchill River where the Big Bend is. We're going down right now. I think it's something in our gas line. It's our gas line or else a broken pot. It might be a broken cylinder head. Go ahead. Roger, we're touching down now. We'll call you later.
Judging from the reaction of local residents, no planes have landed here before. Forced landings aren't as routine a matter as they were in the early days of bush flying. Pilots may set down to avoid a rain squall now and then, but seldom are they forced to land because of engine trouble.
I said, when we're coming over in that long 70-mile dry hop, I had just a pre-humption, or I shouldn't say that, but we never used to do them long ago. They're old-time engines. Now with these latest gadgets and all the rest of it, we take these long dry hops and think nothing of it. So it's a damn good thing this little lake was underneath of us. And we've got to thank that old Indian that I gave that tobacco to. That's all there's to it. Well, there are variable ways to get out of the bush if you have accidents. You just got to try these unorthodox things. If you hit an ice chisel in the lake with a peller and damage a blade, which sometimes you do, don't be afraid to saw the end of the other blade off and make them even. And they might have a little vibration, but you'll get home rather than stay out in the bush. And then for raising airplanes, of course, when they're sunk, we use the tubes, inner tubes, the pump, a little compressor fly it in. Somebody dives down and wraps their inner tubes around the cross struts of the floats and pumps it up and get them out. Then you get her to shore, little bit by bit, and so on. And for patching floats, use various things. Beat it out the best you can, get the airplane up in a few spruce trees, and use butter and chopped up rope, make a mush out of it. And then when it congeals, the frayed string sticks pretty good to a float. Punch a few holes around the float itself where it's broke, so the butter goes into these holes and makes a fairly successful patch. So there are many ways you've got to trial and error. Otherwise, you've been in the bush half the year. One chap with the way down the Mackenzie River, he broke the end of his airplane wing off, way out around Yellowknife. Yeah, I think it was one of the early Anstons or before that. So he takes a handsaw and he saws the other wing off, 4 or 5 feet, and matched it up, and moose hide and sturgeon glue, and flew all the way into Edmonton. When he got there, the department grounded him for 6 months and took his license away. I say they should give that man a medal instead of taking his license away. He got his airplane back with civilization and his passengers.
Baffin Island, 2 days and several hundred miles north of the site of the mishap. The repaired otter reaches its destination and is ready for work.
Somebody said that is the leftovers from the world, and just a little bit of dough that the Lord had left over, he made the Northland. But it's a wonderful country in the summertime. It's just, the flowers are terrific. The purples and the violets and the colors. It's lovely in the summertime. 24 hours daylight. They will find mines, various precious minerals, and it'll come into its own.
Flying supplies into remote mining camps or working the rugged ice patrol from Pond Inlet to Thule, Greenland. There isn't a northern pilot alive who doesn't appreciate the reassurance that radio and radar bring to the top of the world.
VHF. Sarah, procedure 2.
Jack Lamb has been flying from this Baffinland Iron Mines base camp for several months. Only days ago, he was reported missing, when bad radio reception prevented him from closing his flight plan. It was a false alarm, but his family will be glad to see him safely home nonetheless.
Roger. An arrival will be filed with Thule. An arrival will be filed at Thule, and you'll pass that on to Thule, please. Over. Roger. Mary River clear.
Oh, hello, Jack.
Oh, Santi.
Oh, momento.
Just go.
You've been to us? Where you going?
Have a good trip up?
Oh, pretty fair. I brought you a new man up.
Oh, good.
I don't know how he's going to be. You'll have to check him out. Highly recommended by Stu Burke in Calgary and Mobile Oil Men. But, as I say, this country is entirely different flying from Calgary to Moose Jaw. So you'll have to give him a good check-out before you turn things over to him.
Yeah. Well, I'll take him with me to Thule.
Yeah, and keep his nose in the map.
Yeah.
It takes a special breed of man to fly in the North, someone with more than the technical flying skills. In any given day, a pilot might be called upon to move a cache of fuel drums, corner an uncaged bobcat, or even deliver a baby. Tom Lamb and his sons have crisscrossed the continent and traveled around the world. But the North always calls them back. That immense wilderness holds hidden treasure and a spirit of adventure. And this gives life meaning for the flying lambs of the Paw, Manitoba.
And hokey-pokey. All their parakeets and everything in their mitts. And in the windshield, of course, all froze up. On a single engine airplane, like a Norseman, the air going through the engine heats the windscreen. You don't have this trouble. But on the beach, there's nothing, you see. So, of course, there's a sheet of ice all over the windscreen. And Denny was, the mountains are on his side. He was first pilot in it. So we're going along, and I'm watching these old mountains out the side of our head there. And I looked out, and I look again, and we're going between two islands. I said, Denny, there's another island there too. Oh, hokey pokey. So we pull up and right into the stuff. And then we're trying to do a 180 to get out of there. And we're confined, you see, and the beach goes fairly fast, 170. And you get in a confined place there about 2,000 feet across. So it takes a little while to turn. And I look out the window, we're heading for a mountain. And then we turn this way, and the poor old passengers sitting in there. Of course, the passengers, they knew we were maneuvering, something was going on. But they're quite ignorant of what really is going on. Could think. And so we kept moving around there, and then we left the instruments, and he went on to try to scrape the windshield, and the old plane going like this for another hill. And I said, you grab the instruments, and I'll grab the windshield, and between the two of us, we'll figure this out. So then Violet Island was fairly good. Whether we knew that, because we could see way underneath the stuff over there just before we got into the stuff. So we twisted and turned there for 3 or 4 minutes, which seemed like quite a little while. And finally we just dove her down, right over the deck. You could see the seals popping, and headed for Violet Island. And we got straight to it, and then we had about 100 feet then. We snuck around and we lowered the old wheels and the skis. We had wheel skis. And as soon as we come around Pond Inlet, we didn't circle or ask for winds or a darn thing. We just came right down and landed.
We just have to fly in this country. All our activities are far away from the railroads and highways, you may say. So we just gotta fly. Whether it's logging or fishing or mining, prospecting, geological surveys, airplanes. Airplanes are bread and butter. We just have to fly. We have no other way of doing these. It's just a way of life nowadays. It's come right in, the same as the oxen and the team of ponies for the prairie. Years ago, our airplane is made for the North.
Telescope has been brought to you by General Motors of Canada. on behalf of your authorized Pontiac, Buick, Beaumont, Acadian dealer.